First thing I was curious of, what made you want to actually make this movie? I know you were going through this in your life and trying to figure out what manhood was, but why make it a movie?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a legitimate question since when someone who isn't famous makes a movie about themselves, you have to wonder like why should there be a movie about you? And I, it's funny from the very beginning, even though the what I thought it was going to be changed a lot during the making of it. The thing that I sort of believed from the beginning was that I was going through something that was, in some sense, particular to me, but in another way, was something that many, many, many men I knew, and probably many men I didn't know, were also going through kind of secretly. That it was the
Sure.
kind of thing that men were feeling, but characteristically not discussing with each other or with anybody else.
Right.
And wouldn't necessarily admit to anybody, but was true. And if I cornered them and told them all my movies about them, go, oh man, I know exactly what you mean. So I
Gotcha.
always had this sense that if I did it right, that my story could relate to a lot of men. And the great surprise for me, and something that's been really gratifying, is that I've gotten a lot of responses, really personal responses from men, but also from women who see their own relationships with their family members in my film, or see even their own gender struggles within my film. So that's been really great too.
How did your family feel about having cameras and these often deep questions asked of them? Was that is that something that kind of happened already and they're used to it, or was there a process in getting them used to the idea?
Yeah, uh, I guess my family was just surprisingly open and surprising on a couple of levels. Just because I wouldn't expect that kind of openness and sort of gameness from anybody. I mean, everyone, of course, has their right to boundaries and privacy and
Sure.
not having their lives made into a movie. So it was just surprising that they were so willing. And then I think as I've gotten to see and having made the film and watching it with them and with other people, it's just amazing that it was just kind of an amazing act of love that they were willing to do that. Uh, but it was, I think, one of the reasons I was able to get that from them, I think, was that I was doing a lot of work on my relationships with all of them while I was making the film. The film includes some of what I did with my father, but I was doing that with other members of my family too. And I think that hoping, and I think that even though they haven't said this to me, that I think make with them warmer and more present in my life. I think maybe helped my filmmaking with them.
Okay. How long of a process was it to from start to finish as far as the filming for this?
Yeah, it took me almost 7 years.
Okay.
I remember I started. I went to an all boys high school, and we were having a 20th high school reunion. And so the first time I shot was at that 20th high school.
Ah, okay.
From there through, the release of the film last year, first played at Tribeca. So it was almost exactly 7 years from when I first went to that reunion.
That had to have been quite the sense of accomplishment then when you were finished with it and ready to start showing it.
Yeah, yeah. It really has been immensely gratifying. I've been trying to describe that to people now as the film has been released, and I'm getting these letters from all over the place. Really from all. And the amazing thing about Netflix is I'm getting these emails from people from Argentina and
Sure.
Finland, and it's just knocking me out that that's happening. And I'm realizing, it's great that it's having that impact, but it also just for me. Um, I mean, this was the 7 years when I met the person who became my wife. I had children with her. I'm becoming a father. And then so many other things happened that were huge engines of personal growth. The being involved in this men's group has been a huge one. Other things that I did, even the hunting, things that I don't still do or haven't done again, had an enormous impact on me. So in a way, the film is almost a small distillate of experiences that really went far from the film for me in terms of what they meant and how they changed me.
Okay.
And And that was another interesting thing, is that in making a film like this, it's hard to draw boundaries between what I was doing for the film and what I would have done anyway. And because I was making a movie about these things and just exploring them, I was doing certain things because I thought on some level they might be interesting for the film, but that's because they were also things that I was exploring already. So it's hard to say what it was for. But even when I did things for the film that I thought would be good for the film, many of those things turned into these experiences that went well beyond the container of the film for me. And some of the ones, and some of them didn't, and those tended not to make the film. They tended not to, feel authentic enough, maybe, that for them to really work in the film, or just weren't significant enough. So,
do you feel like you're closer to your father now than you were before?
I'm definitely closer to him, and it has a lot to do with having done this work with him, and it just had this almost magical effect of opening my heart to him. It's really that simple. It's interesting. The life coach who appears in the film said, "It's not that you don't love your father; it's that you can't feel the love that you have for your father." And that was very true for me. That I had shut that part of me off in part of it out of having other feelings for him besides love, and having all these other views. I think when I could lay those down genuinely for myself, not just to do it, but it became a very visceral process of I could actually lay that stuff down and feel all this for my dad. And once I could do that, my dad, who really hadn't done that work himself and hadn't changed,
okay,
the same guy and had the same attitudes and feelings about me. None of those things I think have changed, but it really shifted things. I think for him, I felt a shift in him where he, it's like I took a burden off of his shoulders, or I at least opened a door that was otherwise always going to be closed for him because he didn't know how to open the door to me.
How has becoming a father affected your view on what a man and manliness is?
I mean, I know it's had an enormous effect in ways that I don't think I'm even yet able to really articulate. I certainly see how fatherhood requires everything of me. It requires a kind of level of emotional maturity that I didn't know I needed to reach, and now recognize what a lifelong project that's going to be. Or let's just say, like, as long as I'm directly involved in raising these boys and being their father. Being a dad for me is about growing into a further and further acceptance of myself, which is probably obviously part of what the film is about, which is an ongoing process. It's about understanding my emotional life as well as I can, and give my kids as much room as they can to have to express their own emotional life.
Sure.
And I think that, and in having to do that, I see that being in touch with my masculine side is something that maybe was important for me at a certain point in my life. But I think as the story tells it in the film, I come to understand that if coming to better terms with my masculine side was somehow an important part of my own journey, my own process, that it was ultimately, the goal was not to become more manly or masculine, but to become more myself. And I think that is my own personal work to do for my kids, and then the thing that I hope I will allow my kids to do to the fullest extent they can. And so that has nothing to do with being a man. I think that has everything to do with just being a good human being and being a good human being around them. I think the kids learn not by anything that you tell them, but by how you're behaving, by who you are. They read it off you in ways mostly unspoken. And so I want to be living this thing that I wanted myself as a kid, which was to have full reign for my own emotional experience and to have that validated. And to have that, and I always wanted to help managing it. and which doesn't mean always approving of all of it. It just means helping me manage. I want to help managing it, and now that I'm having to manage my own kids' emotional experience, I see just how hard that is. So it's just not, even though I'm taking the time, I don't think my dad necessarily took to do that. I think maybe I bring more tools to that because I've done things that have given me those tools that my dad did, and still I'm watching myself fail at it all the time. So it's just really hard. and I can think of myself as more this or that than my dad, but I still see that task just immeasurably hard.
Sure.
And so I'm humbled by it, and therefore more compassionate for my dad and my parents for their job that they did.